The legendary Aerocrastic is up to no good again, taking Nurgle builds down 4,000 points, and it gives me another opportunity to hammer this point home. A lot of you rightly had criticisms about the sort of odd greenskins build, although it had some pretty good components, was still definitely skewed towards pump wagons. And a lot of you completely missed the point, which is fine, I guess. It's always fun to make videos that have a strong take, because a lot of people just won't even respond or, listen to the video or watch it and respond to the actual words I'm saying. They'll just respond to the take at face value, kind of the lowest common denominator, but that's fine. We're here today to make this point even more once again with a Chaos Dwarfs build that, again, might not be the absolute most meta-perfect build by any means, but it's definitely a pretty well-constructed build. We've got a couple of Kugath Fireborn here. We've got a Sorcerer Prophet on foot, who can, of course, increase weakness to fire. He's got Lore of Hashut as well for some extra weakness to fire here, I believe. Yeah, he does have Ash Storm. We've got a Death Shrieker rocket launcher, magma cannons, some Chaos Dwarf warriors, some Goblin laborers, Hobgoblin archers, not the best missile component, and the Chaos Dwarfs are going to feel that as Aerocrastic comes forward with a couple of Plague Drones. Another thing I've learned from these replays from Aerocrastic is that the Plague Drones are a legitimate air skirmish threat right now, like a fairly dangerous one, and they can move in and pretty easily dismantle this Death Shrieker rocket launcher with their Death's Heads shooting attacks. So the model increase they got actually boosting their missile damage is something a lot of people didn't factor in, I think, and you should see these guys a lot more for Nurgle, I think. Anyway, Kugath's going to be sitting in the back. Right now he has taken some shots from the Death Shrieker, but of course Aerocrastic moving in with clinical precision to just neutralize the threats to Kugath directly, and this is exactly what you should do in terms of multiplayer, kind of assessing target priority. For your shooting attacks especially, but just in general for your damage output. What is the greatest threat to your build, right? And Death Shrieker was definitely it for Kugath. Of course, there's no blunderbusses here, which would be a pretty good bring in this matchup, in my opinion. They're going to be relatively impervious to most Nurgle mobility units. There's a few heavy hitters which will give them a problem, but like Hounds and Furies aren't going to be as much of a problem for them because of their armor and their high DPS at short range. Just generally means they can operate very well. Like, they would have been able to a degree, push away those Plague Drones, although Plague Drones have, only 70 range, so it would be a pretty decent answer to them. Right now, Aerocrastic, again, just sitting back with Kugath, using his artillery attack to accrue some value, and also continuing to hunt down ranged threats with his Plague Drones here. They're, of course, more than a match for these Wolf Raiders in melee, especially as the Hounds get out in space here in this nice desert crater. And same thing over here. Oglacon's Wolf Boys will be a little bit more of a match with their extra melee stats, but still, they're getting chased way out of position right here, which in and of itself is a pretty huge problem. The Chaos Dwarfs are going to start to march forward now, which is definitely something they should do. I mean, the Magma Cannon can contribute some damage at long range, but it's not going to do a ton to Kugath. And, Kugath himself is getting some pretty good value. Nothing too crazy so far. 800 value, 159 kills. But, again, notice what Aerocrastic's targeting with Kugath. It's this Hobgoblin Archer unit, right? He's just been consistently focusing down the most threatening units to Kugath, which is the ranged units, right? And Chaos Dwarfs, while they do have very powerful ranged units, artillery, is single entity, but does have quite long range. But then, like, blunderbusses have relatively limited range, as do the Goblin Archers, right? The Hobgoblins. And here we're going to see finally an Ash Storm put to use against Kugath. He can then just try and maneuver away here towards some more support, or at least out of the area of effect before these fire units make contact with him. And even despite his slow speed, it looks like he will be able to do so. Plague Drones also coming back to help here. The one Plague Drone fighting Oglacon's Wolf Boys is actually kind of losing, which is great value for the Wolf Boys there. But Kugath does make it all the way out of the Ash Storm before the Kadai are able to get in contact here. And the Plague Drone's also pulling up on station without any ranged threats to attack them up in the sky. They can just absolutely decimate these Kadai Fireborn, throwing Death's Heads into their rears. Quite a beautiful sight, though, I have to say. All sorts of fun colors in the desert here. I myself, having just returned from my vacation in the desert, southern Utah. Absolutely gorgeous. Quite hot, but had a good time. a little bit crispy, but not as crispy as these Marauders are about to get as they maneuver in to fight, help support Kugath, who is just tanking it. I mean, even with that Vial of Fashut, again, increasing his weakness to fire, he's just tanking the damage, no problem, because in melee, he's pretty much untouchable, even by these Fireborn. I mean, I think he would, I don't know, even the full-on Kadai Destroyer probably doesn't hold a candle to Kugath in melee. He just is such a strong single entity that he is almost impossible to kill by many things in melee, right? And I will say, a part of this discussion does relate to campaign, and I know Creative Assembly is taking campaign feedback, so be sure to leave all of your feedback about Nurgle in the comments below. Right, Nurgle DLC is coming up in the next, I don't think it's the next one, but the one after maybe. But they are actively collecting feedback about Nurgle, especially on the campaign side, and I think, like, if you were to buff Nurgle's campaign so that Kugath's start was less painful, having him have nerfed melee stats would be a lot less of a problem, especially because that will scale up as the campaign goes on, right? And in general, I would say I am in favor of keeping Kugath very strong, right? He should be. And he probably needs some buffs to go along with the melee defense nerfs that I think would probably be the most important and impactful, but I'm honestly open to other feedback. You guys let me know down in the comments below. Some of you guys had legitimate criticisms, which I probably should have opened with as well. But yeah, some of you guys had really good legitimate criticisms of my take, and we had some good discussions, and I appreciate that. Quite a few of you just completely missed the point, but hopefully you realize more after something like this that the point is, maybe I'll lead with this in the title, is Kugath plus mobility equals win most of the time for Nurgle if you execute it correctly. And obviously, you know, like I said, the build's maybe not completely ideal in the case of Chaos Dwarfs. Maybe there's a few alterations I would make to try and make it more resilient, especially against the Plague Drones. But just in general, the idea of Kugath plus mobility being such a strong force, even against factions which you might think would counter it, and the fact that Kugath can just, you know, spend 4,000 points less and go up against a reasonably decent build and just be able to dismantle it in such a fashion, it's, yeah, it clearly shows, hopefully, that Kugath does need some sort of nerfs, and yeah, definitely an interesting one. I mean, Kugath himself, of course, in that late-game grind is going to accrue a huge amount of value, but tactically, these Plague Drones with the Death's Heads are incredibly important, especially supporting them with the Hounds here, just being able to move in and snipe those high-value targets, and kind of completely neuter the Chaos Dwarf's ability to deal damage to Kugath, and then he just kills everything else, and that is the textbook way to use him. You don't even need a full army to do it, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that. It's definitely a thing that you can do, and I'm sure Aerocrastic has other replays should I need to make this point again at some point, but I'm really hoping that, you know, Kugath gets some small nerfs and maybe some small campaign buffs, or even just missile resistance buffs in battle. Like I said in the previous video, I think like 5 to 10 missile resistance if you were to nerf his melee attack by like 10, and, you know, maybe even more. And then give him that missile resistance, kind of helps smooth out his balance a little bit. I think it would be really helpful from a multiplayer's perspective. And honestly, having missile resistance over melee defense probably helps your campaign more than anything else in the long run. Like, yes, it hurts you initially fighting vampire counts, but again, that's something that really should be addressed on the campaign side in terms of making Nurgle's economy not the worst in the game, and, you know, speeding up some other things, and just making the experience overall less painful, because certainly it is the worst campaign in the game, in my opinion, right now, but I'm not really a campaign player, so what do you care? Anyway, let's just finish up with the battles discussion, since that's why you guys are here, is for those sweet land battles, and just to kind of realize that, yeah, Nurgle is very strong with Kugath, and I've already talked again about the base price on him, but just in general, even taking him with a relatively, you know, kind of modest kit here, really is pretty doable. Something like this is really not hard to do, and he costs less than 3,000 points, so really is something to consider, and hopefully you guys will. If you do enjoy this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, and every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again, we'll see you next time.